Good evening. Early evening. It's Thursday evening. I got inspired today. And actually, I had a picture I wanted to put up. And while people are joining me, I'm going to see if I could get it and possibly get it onto this live stream before I read this. I'm not sure that's going to happen. No, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen. But anyway, I found this article. I got inspired. I thought that I would read it, and I'm going to. So, actually, what started with me today was I was watching. I happened to watch HGTV for a minute, and I had seen this article by on Vice. I had seen it earlier, and I thought, it would really make a good piece. But I did something yesterday, and I was trying to relax today and take it easy because I haven't, I don't do this every day. I don't plan. I can't plan anything on this channel very well. Other people may plan, but I don't plan very well. So here we go. I was watching HGTV. I don't know what made me watch HGTV today, but I'm watching this family, and they are, hi Kim, they are buying a beachfront property. And beachfront property is everything that this HGTV is big. It sells. Hi, Gazer. Well, people are joining me, but they did all this HGV, But these people are buying a property on the beach. It's like they're clueless. They're saying, "Oh, oceanfront view is important. They only want to spend up to 200,000, and they want this, and they have 4 idyllic kids." And I'm looking at this thinking, it's because of these people who want to have a high rise, who want to have everything on the beach. That's why people in Pennsylvania, that's why people in West Virginia, they're all losing their land or getting it drilled or piped or whatever. So all these rich assholes, these entitled people, can have their apartments in Fort Pierce, Florida, on the 18th floor overlooking the ocean. Anyway, I'm going to segue into this because this actual article is called Climate Despair is Making People Give Up on Life. And I thought, well, I'm not giving up on life, right? No. And I don't really know too many people that are giving up on life. Uh, we all talk about things that are scary, upsetting, whatever. But this article, of course, you have to look at the media owners, right? They're not going to give us an article that is kind of telling you the truth. Well, maybe, but you got to let me start it, okay? Because it's a long one. All right. Hi, Osama. Yeah, I'm live. I'm live. I wasn't going to be live, but you know what? I'm home. I'm not doing anything. I got inspired and I'm sitting here. So let me start this one because it's a good one. In the summer of 2015, the warmest year on record, at the time. It was literal heat that got to Meg Rutan Walker, a 37-year-old former teacher in Kitchener, Ontario. Summers have been stressful to me since having my son, said Rutan Walker, who is now an environmental activist. It's hard to enjoy a season that's a constant reminder that the world is getting warmer. I think my anxiety just reached a peak, Rutan Walker continued. It felt like there was nowhere to go. And although she had spoken to her primary care doctor about anxiety, she hadn't sought help with her mental health. Suddenly, she was contemplating self harm. Though I don't think I would have hurt myself, I didn't know how to live with the fear of the apocalypse, I guess. So she says, I guess my son was home with me, and I had to call my friend over to watch him because I couldn't even look at him without breaking down, Rutan Walker said. She eventually checked herself into an overnight mental health facility. Her case is extreme. But many people are suffering from what would be called climate despair, a sense that climate change is an unstoppable force that will render humanity extinct and renders life in the meantime futile. As futile? I don't think any of us feel like it's futile. As David Wallace Wells noted in his 2019 bestseller, The Uninhabitable Earth, for most who perceive an already unfolding climate crisis and intuit a more complete metamorphosis of the world to come, the vision is a bleak one, often pieced together from perennial astrological imagery inherited from existing apocalyptic texts like the Book of Revelation, the inescapable source book for Western anxiety about the end of the world. Climate despair has been a phrase used at least as far back as Eric Pooley's 2010 book, The Climate War, True Believers, Power Brokers, and the Fight to Save the Earth. But it's been in wide circulation for perhaps as little as 2 years. In the more progressive Sweden, the term klimatangst, okay, I'm not Swedish, I did my best, okay, has been popular since 2011, the year a Wikipedia article with that name was created. In The Uninhabitable Earth, Wallace Wells notes that philosopher Wendy Lin Lee calls this phenomena eco-nihilism. We've heard this before, right? And others have tried out terms like human, what is it? Human feudal, I gotta find it because I just had to go look. Human, feudal, futilitarianism. Okay, human futilitarianism. There we go. Whatever you call it, this is undeniably a real condition. So, do we have that, guys? If not, it's one with a set of formal diagnostic criteria. It may reach that status. It took decades for burnout to be declared an official occupational phenomenon by the World Health Organization. It's impossible to know how many people like Rutan Walker have experienced climate despair as a mental health crisis. But despair is all around us. In our own momentary but intense reactions to the latest bit of climate news, in pitch black memes and jokes about human extinction, even in works of philosophy and literature, there is now a fringe group of scientists and writers who not only take our imminent doom as an article of faith, but seem to welcome it. This despair could be a consequence of climate change being more on people's minds than ever before. According to social scientist and psychology scholar Renee Lertzman, author of 2015's Environmental Melancholia, large numbers of people have recently come to the realization that climate change is real and it's scary and it's not being addressed. It's a surreal experience because we're still in the same system. So walking around, people are driving and everyone's eating a lot of meat and everyone's acting like that's normal, she said. For some people, that feeling is incompatible with carrying on with business of everyday life. And that's why I started this piece out talking about the HGTV show House Hunters, where they were looking for that place on the beach for their idyllic family as if there's no care in the world. And then, of course, when they filmed it that day, there wasn't any toxic algae in the water. But climate despair goes far beyond a reasonable concern that a warming planet will make life more difficult and force humanity to make hard choices. Instead of rallying us, climate despair asks us to give up. In a 2009 study in the UK by researchers Saffron O'Neill and Sophie Nicholson Cole, climate-related data visualizations were presented to test subjects who were urged, in fear-based terms, to take action or else. Most of the time, these appeals produced denial, apathy, avoidance, and negative associations. Ultimately, the researchers concluded Climate change images can evoke powerful feelings of issue salience, but these do not necessarily make participants feel able to do anything about it. In fact, it may do the reverse. In other words, if you tell people something must be done or we're all going to die, they tend to take door number two, however irrational that impulse seems. I just want to make sure this is cool. Experts say now is precisely the wrong time to greet doom with open arms. According to Andrew Dessler, professor of atmospheric sciences at Texas A&M University, certainty about human extinction is not accurate, nor is it a particularly helpful point of view. Dessler explained to me in an email that we are still mostly in control of our fate. This is painful, Erskine said. It's super painful to be a human being right now at this point in history. Nonetheless, she added, we need to translate our concern, our despair, our anger, our feelings into action. From a distance, climate despair may seem like ordinary anxiety and depression in patients who happen to be fixating on climate, but it's hard to deny the unique effect climate change is having on mental health. On May 5th, a group of psychologists and psychotherapists in Sweden published an open letter to their government that noted that perverse status quo of climate change. The concern wasn't so much that the environment is breaking down, but that was nothing being done about it. Specifically, the letter noted that children are aware that grown-ups are leaving them a shitty world. And that's really a messed up thing to be aware of when you're a kid. A continued ecological crisis without an active solution focused from the adult world and decision makers poses a great risk that an increasing number of young people are affected by anxiety and depression, reads the letter in Swedish. Greta Thunberg, or Thunberg, the 16-year-old Swedish climate activist who led the recent worldwide school strikes, said in her 2018 TED Talk that knowing about climate change was hell on her young psyche. When I was 11, I became ill. I fell into depression. I stopped talking. I stopped eating. In 2 months, I lost 10 kilos of weight. She would later be told she had Asperger's, OCD, and was selectively mute. Then she came out of her despair and found a voice when she decided to strike, refusing to go to school until the world demonstrated that it's getting its shit together. Simply reading facts about climate change can produce reactions not too dissimilar to Thunberg's. The uninhabitable Earth calls climate change the end of normal, explaining, we have already exited the state of environmental conditions that allowed the human animal to evolve in the first place, in an unsure and unplanned bet on just what that animal can endure. Last year's UN report on humanity's probable failure to stop warming short of the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold had a similar message, as did the one from May about how 1 million species are on track to go extinct due to human-caused environmental degradation, assuming we don't change our course and stop generating greenhouse gases alongside other forms of environmental havoc. Also in May, an Australian think tank called climate change a near mid-term existential threat to human civilization, which is what I believe we all believe here. These warning signs undoubtedly help spread awareness, but for some that awareness can breed hopelessness. Maisie Rohrer, a 20-year-old developmental researcher at New York University, has been struggling to cope with climate change for years. I guess the despair started when I was 18, and I began learning about how much the Earth was changing, and I'd have full-blown panic attacks about the Arctic sea ice melting and the polar bears starving, and I'd call my mom telling her life was pointless. She said she believed at the time that the human race should be wiped out. I became very suicidal And a large part of my justification for feeling like I'd be better off dead was that humans are hurting the earth so much, as one person, couldn't make enough of a positive impact. So it would be better if I were not around to cause any more damage, Roar said. Even those who don't have thoughts of suicide can be affected in profound ways by climate despair. Brooke Morrison, a 26-year-old radio host in North Carolina who chatters about pop music enthusiastically when she's on air. Off air, her world isn't so bright. I feel like I'm already grieving in my life and future, she said. Even her life plans, she wants to move to Los Angeles, are colored by pessimism. I 100% believe that the West Coast will be underwater soon, and I'd like to experience it while there's still time left, she said. There are various levels, as she calls them, on which she struggles with the coming ecological horrors. Feeling as I have already lost, feeling out of control, feeling like I can't start a family, so I talk myself out of wanting one or to even get married, just giving up. Then trying to maintain a will to keep moving forward, trying to hold on to some form of hope. But when she says hope, she doesn't mean hope for the planet. She told me in no uncertain terms that she does not place any value whatsoever in humanity's attempt to mitigate climate change. I think it's too late. These feelings can be powerful, but they aren't grounded in hard science. Michael Mann, the Penn State climatologist often credited for helping bring the public attention to historical trends that are central to our understanding of climate change, calls this perspective doomism. And he wanted to make it clear that the evidence doesn't support it. Unfortunately, there's some bad science behind much of the doomism, he said. There is no need to exaggerate or misstate what science has to say. Here's what the science has to say. Models that use the status quo, aka not changing anything, as a baseline, show that we're headed off a cliff in terms of planetary habitat. Habitat. Habit. There's something wrong with me with words. Habitability. Habitability. It's those words. They're like tongue twisters. But these models are probably overstating humanity's inaction. Entire small countries have no bullshit plans to decarbonize quickly, and larger ones are making no bullshit progress, just not nearly fast enough. Following these trends, it's possible to imagine humanity will achieve relative climate stability, even as the already baked in effects of our greenhouse gas emissions, some of them horrible, keep rolling out, perhaps for thousands of years. That would be better than never decarbonizing and never achieving any semblance of stability ever again. Dessler puts it this way. I think it's clear that emissions will come down to zero and stabilize the climate sometime this century. But taking 50 years to do that will yield a different world than if we do it in 20 years. It's up to us to decide which of these worlds we want to live in. Humanity clearly needs to treat climate, not climate change, climate as an urgent problem. And as Wallace Wells notes in Uninhabitable Earth, it's important to discuss extremely pessimistic possibilities as long as they are in fact possible. Because when we dismiss the worst case scenarios or the worst case possibilities, it distorts our sense of likelier outcomes, which we then regard as extreme scenarios we needn't plan so conscientiously for. But the intellectual thrust of climate despair takes this further, insisting that only the worst case scenarios are worth serious consideration. This is a worldview that has blossomed on places like the R Collapse subreddit, which curates news events in such a way as to demonstrate that the world is coming to an end. Authors Paul Kingsnorth and Dugald Hine put the term solutions in scare quotes in their 2014 Dark Mountain Manifesto, which while mostly a literary call to arms, is also an embrace of society's unraveling. And there are scientists who have marketed themselves as doomsaying prophets, only for their prophecies to be disproved. Among them are the notorious melting sea ice exaggerator Peter Wadhams and the ecologist and the end is nigh fabulous Guy McPherson. I wonder if this person has gone up there or seen what's going on in the Arctic. Hmm. But nothing compares to the now this get this one okay. Nothing compares to the intense viral bleakness of Deep Adaptation, a map for navigating climate tragedy by Cumbria University professor Jem Bendell, a 2018 paper that Bendell self-published after an academic journal declined to publish it. The paper argues that total societal collapse is on its way and describes life in the midst of that collapse with vivid sentences like, "You will fear being violently killed before starving to death." The paper was so powerful that people have credited it for sending them to therapy or quitting their jobs to live closer to nature. But deep adaptation has been pilloried as an all around shoddy piece of work by academic standards. I showed deep adaptation to the anthropologist Joseph Tainter, the foremost scholar I could find on the topic of societal collapse, and he told me this: I find Bendell's paper to be simplistic and superficial. Since it is also alarmist, I will also call it irresponsible. After reviewing environmental trends related to climate change, he fails to demonstrate how these lead to starvation, destruction, migration, disease, and war. Climate change might lead to some or all of these things, but in such a paper, one needs to demonstrate how. In response to Tainter, Bendell told me his paper didn't explain the mechanism of collapse because it was already long given the summary of climate science and of processes of denial, and said the paper was speaking to my professional field of sustainability management and not to other fields such as those who study the history of societal collapses. Anyone who follows climate change knows how devastating the consequences will be. But there's concern among academics and activists that perspectives like Bendell's do more harm than good. Man, the climatologist, thinks even Wallace Wells goes too far. In a response to the 2017 New York Magazine article, Wallace Wells' book was based on, man wrote, fear does not motivate, and appealing to it is often counterproductive, as it tends to distance people from the problem, leading them to disengage, doubt, and even dismiss it. Taking it a step further, British writer and climate activist George Monbiot sees succumbing to despair as a moral failure. By throwing up our hands about the calamities that could one day afflict us, we disguise and distance them, converting concrete choices into indecipherable dread. Monbiot wrote in April, we might relieve ourselves of moral agency by claiming that it's already too late to act, but in doing so, we condemn others to destitution or death. If despair breeds inaction, that's obviously a problem. But others think a certain amount of dread could be helpful. In an essay by four sociologists, Kasia Paprocki, Daniel Aldana Cohen, Rebecca Elliott, and Liz Kozloff, published in May, the authors argue for something called useful discomfort. They write that they couldn't help but notice that their colleagues in the physical sciences are having a tough time dealing with overwhelming evidence of an apocalypse, and that they're largely despairing because both of what they know and how they are being ignored, dismissed, and even outright threatened. However, they write, we believe that our discomforts are productive. They allow us to reject catastrophism and clarify possibilities for better futures. Now, that doesn't sound like something I wouldn't say. I like that. In fact, as despair has ramped up, Americans' view of climate change seems to have shifted. In February, Yale published a survey of attitudes about climate change and noted an 8% spike in Americans alarmed by climate change over the course of a single year. That survey was conducted just after the autumn release of the UN's blockbuster 2018 special report, by which time Wallace Wells' New York story had also been circulated. The Yale survey doesn't connect those dots, and correlation doesn't mean causation. But it's tempting to think something shook a whole lot of people out of their complacency, at least momentarily. Politicians are also increasingly talking about climate change, with the left lining up behind the Green New Deal framework, and even some Republicans willing to consider climate policies. That's likely not much comfort for those already struggling with mental health issues that dialogue around climate change can worsen. I felt like every meal I ate and every coffee or drink I had with a straw was going to be more detrimental than was probably true, and that led me to stop eating enough and to make some other decisions that hurt my overall health, said Rohrer. And this in turn fed into my depression, more because of lack of nutrition and sleep, and that increased my paranoia and panic about the climate. It was really just a vicious cycle. Katerina Georgiou, a London therapist, told me in an email that climate despair is usually connected to clients who present already, and I was just going to say this at the last paragraph, already that present with a diagnosis of anxiety, generalized health, or OCD. Georgiou explained that these patients are suffering a lot. But in her assessment, it's less to do with the topic itself and more to do with the pattern of how anxiety works. Climate change just happens to be where the fixation is, but it's a fixation. It's the fixation that's the symptom. When I asked what coping strategies she suggests, Georgiou's answers was reduce amount of time watching the news and being on social media. Bye-bye. But many of the people I spoke to who suffer from climate despair didn't want their fixation on the future of the planet to be treated as a symptom. For these patients, one important first step seems to be simply finding a therapist who acknowledges up front that climate change isn't a manifestation of mental illness. Rohrer was relieved to eventually find someone like this. She heard me out, let me rant for over 2 hours on our first intake appointment, and then basically said we needed to put things like my specific despair about the climate on the back burner and wrangle in my tendency to catastrophize everything. At first, I was really annoyed, Rohrer told me, but once she explained why, and we made a plan which included coming back to it, I felt understood, which really helped. According to Rutan Walker, the activist who had the crisis in 2015, the perfect therapist would recognize that, yes, mental illness is the problem at hand, but would simultaneously recognize the enormity of the climate crisis. She told me that this would also need to be someone I could work with long term because I still have to live in a world and the climate crisis isn't going away. Getting stuck in despair isn't an option for me as a parent or an activist. Lursman thinks that therapists have to change because what we're talking about is, in fact, new and unprecedented, and that we need new practices for addressing this. Although she added, that doesn't mean we're starting from scratch. She said, one way or another, we need to have a whole lot of no holds bars conversations about how we feel about climate change, where no emotion is wrong. That's what you can do here. When there's a crisis going on in our lives, like a job loss or losing someone or a divorce or upheaval, or now increasingly displacement from natural disasters and flooding and fire, we need to be able to process our experience, usually by talking with people, Lursman said. Then we can be more capable of actually moving forward. This context is no different. For therapists, Lursman suggested a practice called motivational interviewing, which is MI, pioneered by the psychologists William Miller and Stephen Rollnick. Motivational interviewing is meant to steer people toward difficult but necessary behavioral changes by asking them questions. It takes time to have a 10-minute conversation or a 15-minute conversation using MI versus a 5-minute interaction where you just tell someone, here, you need to eat this, or you need to exercise more. Lursman said, she added that respecting our experience as valuable and full of wisdom is the most important part of MI derived therapy for climate despair, and that specific techniques gleaned from MI include sitting in circles talking, creating safe spaces to be honest and vulnerable, and sharing our stories, which is exactly what Carolyn Baker and Dean Walker did when I went to their seminar. And that was a safe space, and it was awesome. And it was a great experience. So there are people doing this already in the doomosphere, so to speak. Even if therapies like these could unfailingly turn people's despair into helpful action, it seems like a slow process to undergo at a time when, as Bill Nye recently pointed out, the world is on fire. Still, Lursman told me, sometimes we have to slow things down in order to move forward. There's a phrase in MI, we don't have time not to take the time, she said. But if learning to motivate people sounds time consuming, there's another much older and simpler way to profess despair. Give into it for a moment. Cry it out. Let yourself acknowledge how fucking bad it all is and how a lot of it is never, ever getting better. In short, grieve. Rutan Walker told me she often uses grief as a way to process her emotions about climate. We have to acknowledge that we've changed our planet. We've made it more dangerous, and we've done harm, she said. Lursman co-signed this approach. It's healthy to grieve, she said. We need to actually pause. We need to honor and engage with how we are feeling. That's not the same as wallowing. It's not the same as going into a hole, a hole that you never come out of. Grief is a process. It's a recognition, Rutan Walker exclaimed. But you can still move on. The author's name is Mike Pearl, and he's the author of a forthcoming book, The Day It Finally Happens: Alien Contact, Dinosaur Parks, Immortal Humans, and Other Possible Phenomena. Now, there were really good parts of this, and there were really bad parts of this. I mean, there were some things I agree with, and some things I don't. But I thought it was very much worth a read to you guys. And I like to narrate, and I like the discussion. I saw that the discussion was really pretty busy out there, and I haven't had much chance to read because your comments. I just have to tell you, my neck is killing me. I should have put my neck brace on to do it. I'm trying not to twist and turn. That's why I do. I have my whole setup here with this thing and then that thing and whatever. And anyway, thank you guys. Let me look at a couple comments because I don't want to let you guys out. And Veg is here, and Kim's here, and Osama's here, and Trish is here. Oh, Trisha, by the way, tomorrow night will be a group show discussion, okay? Because I know you want group stuff. And hi, S. Shiva and Lightning Rod. And listen, Kim Santino, by the way, is here with us. She's one of the mods. And I set up a GoFundMe for her. I'm going to put the link in. If any of you could help her a little bit, she's got I said yesterday wrongly. She had a shoulder replacement, and they need help. They need help with her. They need a dog. They need a dog walker. and she needs some medical bill help, just like a lot of us. Hi, Chris is here, Natural Progressive, and Emma Lawrence, hi, says, changing my diet, using supplements, and cutting toxic people out of my life were also very helpful. And you know what? I have done exactly that. And I'm doing actually great, as far as fitting into clothes, and everything's changing for me that way. I wish my spine would, but I will tell you, eating really clean and all that does really help your mental health. And I have one more thing. There is a commenter on YouTube that keeps making comments on my videos about how I'm not depressed, or the opposite of depression, the comment was, is hypomania. And I'm not sure if this person is referring to me, but I'm not hypomanic. Um, I have climate despair at times, and you know that. I have more of this like feeling of, I just get like incredulous about the state of the earth and politics and the world. I have a disability that makes me hurt every minute of my life. But you know what? Like I said yesterday, I'm not a victim. I don't sit here and whine and cry. And, I just tell you guys what's going on. When shit is bad, I don't come on live. And I can take an hour out of my life and sit here. Um, let's see. Osama says, reality is for those who can't handle their drugs. See, this is a community though here, the Natural Progressive, um, all of them, Kevin's channel on Black Bear News, all of our so-called doomer communities. I find there's a lot of inspirational people, and that we're not all giving up, because we're not sitting here saying near-term human extinction. I don't tell anyone, that hopium is a bad word, or say the word hope. If you want to feel hope, hope for something, for fuck's sake. I don't care. What makes you happy? I know what makes me happy. So I'm going to let y'all go. We have a pretty good audience. Oh wait, Kim says she shattered every bone in her right shoulder, so now she's bionic. See, she needs our help. I don't ask for anything. This is a no donation thing. So this is the first time I've ever done this, and it's for someone else, because that's what I do. I would give everything to anybody to help them. And I know a lot of you are like that. And you know what, Emma? Thanks for building the community. It does help. And I kind of didn't agree with what they said about Jen Bendel, because I thought deep adaptation was a pretty decent thing. There's a lot of people that don't like anything. You can find someone that's going to hate something about everything in this whole genre. It's always happening like that, because nobody's ever happy with everything. You know that. People have to, she says Sam loves Sam. Me too. People have to, I'm getting waylaid by the comments. You're my family. You guys give me a sense of belonging. See? So it's a good thing. We could call ourselves whatever we want to call ourselves, activist, doomer, any of it. It doesn't matter. All these goddamn labels. It's how we feel in here and what we do for others. That's a really important part. That's one thing that the article didn't talk about. The article didn't talk about when you do things for others, it's incredibly rewarding. And Jacqueline Heinel, who has the Send the Bill to the Fossil Fuel group on Facebook, she does for others. She's a scientist, but she also is a Red Cross volunteer, and she goes all over to the disasters. She knows we're fucked, but she doesn't stop. She doesn't stop. She inspires me. I can't walk to the mailbox without hurting, but she inspires me. Vegematic, you guys keep me sane. Yeah, and I wasn't even going to do this. Like I said, I can't plan. I can't plan anything. Well, guys, somebody's new. You're Environmental Seattle. If we had only discovered nuclear at peacetime. Okay, that's something I guess I don't know what you guys are talking about there. But Trisha says, again, she says, I do, she likes Jim Badell. XR is facing the usual backlash for standing out. We are human beings, and backlash is our middle name. Bitch, moan, and complain about everything. Not like this one, fight with that one, divisive, whatever. But we're not right here. And we're not going to be on Environmental Coffee House. You know that because at least on Facebook, everybody does. Because when they fight in the comments, we have a meme that we put up that tells them basically, hit the road if you don't like it. But it's nice. It's really nice. All right, guys, listen, I'm going to let you go. Hey, CB. He says, I just see good people here. Yep. I can't believe it's almost a year since we had our party. And he was here. Yep, he was here. All right, guys. Have a good Thursday night. I was supposed to go to a party for my friend, and I'm not going because I'm not leaving the house because I can't sit in a bar for a birthday party. It is what it is. I do miss out on things, but it's okay. Oh, Sandy, read up on Lisa. Lisa Meitner, she discovered fission and was shocked that it was turned into weapons. Oh, boy. So many people give me so many good things, and there's just not enough time in the day for me to learn everything. But maybe I'll have Antonio or Jennifer look at that one. I don't know. Maybe we can all look at it. But peace, love, and coffee, she says. All right, I'm going to end at peace, love, and coffee. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. Glad you liked the reading. Peace and good night. Tomorrow night, but we'll be on Facebook Live tomorrow night. But it'll be put up here. Okay. Bye.